Every time we record, so we're recording now, Daryl, we're up, brother. Thank you for joining me. But every time I start the podcast, if I don't hit record as soon as I start talking to the guest, we lose all the good stuff, man. Yeah. You, how many years ago is that for you? We were just talking about conferences. We were talking about, like, there weren't many big names years and years and years ago in the fire service, and the only way you could find them is reading their articles or their, back then, their books, right? Like, there was no other way to find them.
Yeah, I mean, if you weren't engaged in the magazines or publications, you weren't really knowing the names. And there was only, I'm out in California, and there's, a lot of Hollywood stars and things like that, mostly in Southern California. I'm up in Northern California, but man, when I, met a guy like Andrew Fredericks, it was, right. It was like meeting a star. And,
yes.
But I only knew him through articles that he was writing in fire engineering, and Fire Nuggets was he was writing some articles there. But there were only a few big names. But now with shows like what you have, and other podcasts, there's a lot of people have a platform. And that's really exciting to share information with them.
I think it's a lot of fun, right? And I think what comes with that is tremendous amount of responsibility. And I carry that because I am a student. I've talked about it a lot. I am a student of fire engineering, and that's what we were talking about is people that would write years and years ago. You mentioned Andy Fredericks. Like, I literally just spoke this past Monday night at the Rockland County, New York Fire Academy. I did my program there, and that place is dedicated to Andy Fredericks, who grew up in Suffern, New York. That's where he lived when he was killed on September 11th. So I posted a picture of his statue and so on. I said, honored and humbled to speak there. I think that carries a tremendous weight with us because we've been doing this a while. So we understand and respect what went into it years and years ago because it wasn't as easy as it is today, right? Like, who the hell am I? I came out of nowhere, started the National Fire Radio channel, podcast, talking to people, growing and building out content. I could be anybody from anywhere, but the most important thing is the only way it works is when you're transparent and honest. And that's what those authors and those leaders, those fire service leaders years ago, that's what they brought to the table, right?
Yeah.
Like Andy Fredericks, you felt like you knew him, right? Like when you met him, you felt like you knew him because you knew his articles and his writings and so on, correct?
Well, when I was reading information early on, a lot of it was in contrast to what I was learning out here on the West Coast. And, there's not much West Coast representation, I guess, in the fire service when it comes to instructors. And, we were learning a lot of tactics and techniques that were opposite or, just not in line with what he was talking about in those articles. And I read this stuff early on and it just made sense. It seemed like very simple. And it wasn't complex. It was very simple and it made sense. And I was really on board. I only got to meet him once. It was early on in 2001 because he was out here for FDIC East up in Sacramento, and a good friend of mine, Jay Camella, who was also Oakland Fire captain. He was very good friends with Andy. He was actually supposed to see him on that day, 9/11, but Jay was in New York that day, ended up on the pile for a couple of weeks and all that. That's another story, but he had Andy come down to the Oakland Fire Training Center, listen to him speak, and then we went onto the bay and had some drinks and dinner out on the bay. And I had no idea that would be the one and only time I got to meet him. But we were talking about nozzles and water flow and fire attack, and it was I cherish that moment. I wish he was still here today. He'd be very proud of a lot of the stuff going on in the fire service today. And you were talking about Dana earlier.
Sure.
And what a superstar he would be if he was not taken from us on 9/11. And Andy would be a superstar. He's a superstar today, even though he's not with us. But those articles are they were very important in shaping my career and a lot of others. And it he's making a difference, beyond the grave, which is great.
Legacy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I the other day I was having this conversation with somebody, and I said, there's only like two things you get to leave behind when you go, and that's your name and your legacy. And did you truly make a difference? Did you make an impact? And it doesn't need to be on a large scale, say the Book of Andy and Andy's influence on, correct water application at fires and so on, right? It could be as simple as, did you mentor somebody? Did you instill some values or protect the integrity of the job or stick up for your guys when the time was necessary to stick up for them? I think those little things too absolutely matter.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because when Jay and I were in Oakland, and we were able to make some changes to the engine equipment, and some tactical changes that took place after we had a line of duty death, and that really motivated Jay and others to make some positive changes to our basic engine operations. It was interesting because I remember listening to the radio, to companies going to a job, after we had just passed out all this equipment, and you hear, hey, fire's out, fire's knocked, whatever, and it was the first time I felt like, wow, we're making an impact at a fire we're not at, and that was a moment for me that, we can make differences or have our thumbprint on, and you got to take the good with the bad. That,
Sure.
it's not always going to be positive. There's nothing perfect, but you can have an impact at fires you're not even at, from the work that you did a long time ago. So that's really important to me.
You said something that really stuck out to me, and I wrote it down before. You said it's changing culture versus changing equipment. And I think that plays exactly in line with what you're talking about, because here's the thing, right? I don't know the story, and I hope that you'll share it with us about a lot of what the catalyst was, say, in Oakland during your tenure there, to change your way in how you operated, what you're referring to, what you're just talking about, right? And looking at that and what was involved. But you have to change the culture to allow for a change in what we do, because we can go in and we can give you a new nozzle, new hose and nozzle package, and say, go train on this. But if you don't fix the culture behind that, it's never going to be implemented correctly.
Yeah, 100%. So I come from a background of sports and competitiveness. I grew up in a BMX family, so my brother was a pro BMXer, and I was just in his shadows. But
I just had my GT Performer reworked at the bike shop. I got to go pick it up.
Oh, nice. Yeah, my brother raced for it was called Hutch BMX.
Yeah. Cool, man.
With the
That's
stars
awesome.
and the stripes. It was fun times. I think there's a Facebook 80s BMX out there. And,
I got to check it for sure, man. That's cool. Absolutely.
Yeah, Ron Smith and I, he's up there in Gary. We talked because he's an old BMXer too.
Get out of here. I didn't know that about him. That's cool. I love that. Okay.
Yeah, but with sports, whether it's racing cars or whatever, if there's a competitive edge or a piece of equipment that can be changed to give you an edge on your enemy, you take that as long as it's within the rules. And in the fire service, obviously the fire's our enemy, the building's our enemy. And so when we changed hose and nozzle systems, we were using 1.5 inch, high pressure, combination fog nozzles that were lower flow. And we basically went to 1.75 inch. We went to a 7/8 tip, some higher volume, lower pressure fog nozzles, things like that. But man, it was met with some resistance, with some hardcore resistance. But before a lot of people even ever had it in their hands or went to a job with it, it was just a culture that was something I didn't know, I guess because I'm early on in my career, how passionate a lot of people in the fire service were about certain pieces of the equipment that they were using. And it's not just true of, the organizations I work for. I mean, this is just across the country. There's some real ownership people have of what they're using. And so, like I said, it's not just changing equipment, it's also changing the culture. And like Dave McGrail used to tell people in class, we're not selling any equipment. We're selling a concept.
That's
I
right.
have no money involved in this. I'm going to be on this end of the same hose line I'm asking other people to use. But, it even got involved with at the union level where they wanted people to document negative experiences. And it was just, it was a tough time. But, I feel like if you have integrity and you are doing, the right thing for the right reason. And I know Anthony Rowett, from Mobile, he
Sure.
talks a lot about that, which is important. I felt like we were doing the right things for the right reason, but maybe not everybody understood that. So if you're looking to make any modifications, I think change is sometimes a strong word. It's an evolution. We're doing the best thing that we know at the time to make things safer and more effective. And I know we were doing the right thing, but you have to listen to people. Their concerns are often real. They might be misguided, or maybe it's some legacy of some experience somebody else had. But I think for people to be open-minded, you have to listen. You have to listen to them, their concerns first. It can't just be pushed upon them. So sometimes some officers that were, downtown felt like they didn't really have a say in some of the new high-rise equipment, and some others felt like firefighters shouldn't, be heading up change because you're not even a company officer yet, or senior people that have been in for a long time thought somebody new shouldn't be making changes. And the thing is that they're all correct in some way. They want to be heard. They just want to be heard. They just don't want something pushed upon them. And so that's one thing that's really important. And I'll say this, like, if you took a firefighter, they came into the academy and maybe there's some hose evolution or they're dealing with, and it's a really tough one. Maybe even they're almost failing the academy, figuring out a way to cut time off of this evolution, and then they finally got it, and they get on the job, and they start going to fires, and they're successfully using this technique, and they have success on it. And next thing you know, they're teaching the new guy this evolution.
That's right.
So maybe their father or grandfather used this, whoever, there's a lot of ownership into that. So when we scrapped some like hose evolutions, like we eliminated like the gated Y, and that was like, people were just, there's so much blood, sweat, and tears and experience of grabbing this pack and unbundling it and hooking it to the Y and tying it off and things like that. And then you just take it away from them. It feels like a part of them is like,
yeah, I get it.
We're not doing this anymore. I've got all these little techniques I've been teaching people.
Right.
Use this at fires, and they want to be heard. But there is a time to make modifications and move on if there's something we think is better.
The salesmanship of it is super important in the process like that, and you get a lot of people, especially today, where we're making change for the sake of making change, and it's not necessary, or the method around it isn't being delivered correctly. We're pounding our chest and telling you this is so much better, and we're better because we came up with it, and that's not the salesmanship that we need. You have to get that buy-in, and a lot of people romanticize about the way it's always been, and that's always been something in the fire service that has been that a lot of innovators come up against, and it's finding that balance in the sales pitch, finding a way to show some respect for those that have an opinion, even if their opinion is outdated or unfounded. They still have an opinion. There has to be a way in which it can be embraced, but educate. And I think education is the key. And part of that pushback, though, is people that just don't want to change. That's it.
Yeah, there's definitely always going to be that part, but a lot of them, they're just not. Yeah, that's it's never going to be easy. You know,
Yeah,
there's
right.
there's
I
certain
get it.
people that they want to change too quickly, and you can't jump on board
That's
too quickly.
that's it.
You know, and
Yes.
I was fortunate to work in a department that really kind of allowed me and some others involved to, give things a try. It wasn't
Sure.
one where everything is, a T is crossed and I dotted. It was looked upon as fire equipment, hose nozzles. We're not trying anything totally crazy. So I can, when I was an officer, especially put different stuff on my rig to give it a try. And,
But to get there, right, even before you got there, where does this all come from? You mentioned, Andy Fredericks, and you're talking about reading his articles years and years and years ago, earlier in your career. So you had to have some type of buy-in early on that you wanted to further educate yourself or learn more from others. You talked about the East versus West and how you guys were doing it. It was different than the East, and Andy's writings or teachings were contradictory or different than what you knew. So where does that, for you, that personal buy-in? It's probably just who you are, I would assume.
Yeah, my personality, and my wife would attest to this, that I go down rabbit holes.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, if I was researching, I don't care, remote control cars or I'm looking into.
You were all in.
Yeah, I'm all in on something, and I'll just go down the rabbit hole. And in the fire service, it ended up being, engine operations and the initial attack hose line and water flow. And so where does that come from? So yeah, it is part of my personality. But when I was in my very first fire department, it was Redwood City, which is a suburb of San Francisco, and that's where I got my start. And we had to be engineers as well. And I was, 20 years old, young kid, and I had to know how to drive and pump a rig,
Sure.
and here it is, 4 years after I got my driver's license,
Right.
I'm responsible of pumping a fire engine. Well, I was working with an officer that was looking to make modifications to Redwood City's engine, just basic hose and nozzle package. And that city was influenced by San Francisco, and he, had some family that worked in San Francisco, and really looked upon them. So we were trying some of the equipment they were using, but it was really motivated going all the way back to One Meridian Plaza fire in
Philadelphia.
In 91.
Yeah.
In Philadelphia. And
Yep.
so they were building some high rises, and basically we were flowing water every day. We had different hose and nozzle manufacturers come into the firehouse, and I'm trying to learn automatic and select gallonage and, constant pressure. All these things, smooth bore, like which one's right, which one's wrong, or whatever the case may be. And at the time I still have to pass my test to pass probation. And I was struggling with that.
Yeah,
I was no natural born like engine guy. I'm trying to learn this, and I'm thinking, man, I got a job where I have to use math. This is terrible.
Wild. Right.
But yeah, and we made some changes. So I was just thrust into the hydraulics of it early on, and then I got to see the other side of it. Using it at fires.
Sure.
With the legacy equipment and the newer equipment, and that was that was very cool, learning the technical side along with the practical application and seeing the changes.
You say legacy product. I mean, I'm thinking about my career, and I've only known the nozzle and the hose packages that we have, inch and 3/4, and smooth bore. We do run automatic nozzles too, but It's a modernized package, and you're talking about legacy product, right? High pressure, low gallon, like that type of
Yeah.
thing. So, fighting fires, did you find that you guys? I had a conversation a while back with some old timers from Michigan, and I think like a Grand Rapids area, and they were telling me that until they did nozzle and hose pairings in their fire department 30 years into their career, they always wondered why they'd get their ass kicked trying to make a push, because they didn't understand that the package they had limited their abilities to make that push. Did you see that early on, like with the legacy product versus, a more modernized package or a more put together package between the way it was and the way we wanted to move forward?
I can't say that specifically, and it is interesting. Now you have me really thinking like that term legacy product, because like
What does it mean, right?
It is going
Yeah.
back to,
Right.
I guess, what is actually, maybe, legacy nozzles, maybe not flows, but
Okay.
but there was, a couple things that were changing. We were increasing the volume of water. We were changing the going from this 30-degree fog to a straight stream, and I noticed it more when I got to Oakland, because it was even lower flow. It was still 1.5 inches and 30-degree fog, and honestly, we were just getting a much greater volume of fires when I started Oakland than I was in the suburb.
But you say volume of fire, but I also want to say too,
Yeah.
fire has evolved during this time too, so that our fuel loads are burning hotter, faster,
Yeah.
and heavier, and the amount of fire on arrival today versus years ago when you have ordinary combustibles, it's night and day difference.
Yeah, definitely. The plastics and all. I think over the time I saw, I didn't experience like that type of change, but
Okay.
I can definitely say that the push was so much easier. And actually, I remember Jay was talking to a member, so this is like third party information, but a guy said going from that 1.5 inches, with the fog nozzle to 1.75 inches in the smoothbore was like it was like no fight. It felt like he was catching a big fish on a lightweight test line.
Yeah.
With the equipment we had come from. And I don't want it to be a fight. I want it to be an unfair fight.
100%.
I want it to be an unfair fight.
Who wants to be undergunned?
Yeah. So that change was.
I got you thinking, don't I?
Yeah. I'm always
love
thinking
that.
about this stuff, but
Yeah.
that change was really not that you can't lose fires with the
Of course.
nozzles and hose
Absolutely.
systems. People lose fires all the time, but we want to shift the odds of success into the hands of the firefighters to have the best fight they can have.
Yeah, and I think that what's fun about that is as the fire service has progressed, we are in a place today that I don't think we've ever been before, with the amount of education and understanding and science that is now being accepted and introduced into everyday decision making, which we didn't have years ago. And I think where we are today is we have a better educated firefighter and a better educated system than we've ever had before.
Yeah. And another thing we were talking about, making change to culture, but the other part of it was with this education, we can't get too sciencey about some stuff. It is science.
I agree.
But how the hose and nozzle system feels in somebody's hand, how they can handle it at some point is going to be very important. So, me personally, I wasn't a huge proponent of the 15/16. It just felt very hot. We're out there on the training ground and we're POing it, and we got exactly 50. And here I am, I was in my mid 20s and, going to the gym. And at times it was heavy for me. And I know, not that we have to tailor equipment to the lowest common denominator, but we have to be realistic that, you're going to be off balance. You're going to be crawling over piles of clothes. You're going to be maybe fatigued or having a cramp, or somebody that had, a knee or hip surgery or whatever the case may be, or the line is going to be overpressurized at times. And I don't want somebody struggling with the line more than fighting the fire. So, just backing off, a little bit and going to that 7/8 and backing off that nozzle reaction,
A
like 9 or
16th,
10 pounds.
right?
Yeah.
It's
And
wild.
size matters, right?
Yeah,
So
that's big. Absolutely.
it does. And it got more buy-in, and it was, more forgiving with flows. I'm a huge proponent of the 7/8, and that spanned over my entire career.
Yeah.
And, and I've tried, all of the above, and I still come back to that, and so how it feels in people's hands is more important than just what the numbers are saying on paper, because
Totally
there
get
has
it.
to be practicality to it.
Yeah, but I think that the lesson there out of that whole conversation is you got to go do.
Yeah.
Like you got to put water in, you got to wet those lines, and you need to push those lines and operate them in an environment that you should be doing every single day. And you talked about your early years in Redwood. You said you guys were stretching lines every day, testing, trying. That is how you truly learn what is best for you. And that's when you get to have an opinion, whether you like 7/8 or 15/16, or, this package works, this package doesn't. That's super important. Understanding the culture, understanding how we teach our pump training. Do we have an organized MPO course or chauffeur course that we know our chauffeurs are on the numbers, or are we giving them, hey, if I need more, I'll let you know type of thing, right? Because we have all those environments.
Yeah, and it's not that one is right or one is wrong.
Correct.
There is nothing that is perfect, and I try to approach, I try to approach everything as that there's certain things that are a better choice than others based on whatever factors that you are measuring it against. And for some, that 15/16 may be a better choice for them for whatever they're dealing with. And so, one thing I talk about in class is I talk about like the FBI. The FBI, after this crazy shooting in Miami, this famous like shootout, they went away from revolvers and went to a 40 caliber, and then the entire U.S. Police force ended up following suit, going to this 40 caliber. It was kind of like the 15/16 of the of the police world. Follow-up shots were off, accuracy was falling off, and they ended up scrapping all that across the country, going down to the 9mm. Now, on paper, ballistics 40 caliber is better, but you have to hit your target.
That's it, right?
You have to hit your target. So it was like 9mm was enough, and now you look, and that's like nobody's using what they had before, because it does make a difference of what it feels like in the hands, and that you're more accurate. And I think hose lines are the same way.
It makes tremendous sense. I mean, it makes it's where the rubber meets the road. That's it. You gotta take theory. You gotta take science theory, right? All part of the scientific theory is, hypothesis, figure it out, put your numbers together. It looks great on paper, like you said, but until we put it in the streets, we don't know how it's going to perform.
Yeah. So one thing we did right before, when I was as training captain, my last year, it might have been like my last year or two, I was still chair of the hose and nozzle committee, and we were pretty early adopters of the 2 1/4 inch.
Yeah,
hose.
interesting.
I was very excited about that. It sounds like it's not much of a huge deal, but I think it's a big deal. It's not for every department, but we are one that 2 1/2 was just a hand line for us, because we use 3-inch for supplying buildings and master streams and things like that. So the 2 1/2 was just a hand line, and it's really closer to like 2 3/4 inches. So the 2 1/4 is like a lot smaller than it sounds, but we kept our target flow.
Yes.
The target flow is still an 1 1/8 tip, and but in the hands, it's just so much more user friendly, and people really like it. So that was one where I really couldn't find much of a negative. It was, going to a smaller hand line to keeping the flow the same. Now the flow capability is not the same because some people you're using 2.5 for larger flows of master streams and things. But as a hand line, that was one change we had recently made, and it is, like I said, my thumbprint's on it, good or bad. So and there's a lot of money involved. It's not easy to change a job that big to change a hose line size.
Well, you saying that was going to be one of the things I was going to say to you is changing a culture in Oakland, California. We're not talking a small department here.
Yeah. Well, your reputation matters, and
Yep.
I think I left with a good reputation. I tried to stay on busy companies. I listened to people, and that can lead to a lot of positive opportunities and things like that. So I was one doing the work, and people recognize that. I'm not asking people to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And yeah, so some people, if they want to get on a committee or something just to pad a resume, that's not going to work. Everybody's going to see through that because they
That's
know
right.
what you've been doing in the streets. And I teaching your own people. Bill Guston had said this, I think when he got an award back here at FDIC, like a Lifetime Achievement Award. He's like, teach your own people because you can't lie to your own people.
That's
They're gonna
right.
know who you are, where you come from, and it is the toughest crowd to deal with. But yeah, is it a perfect hose line size? No, but it's just like, are the benefits outweighing anything negative? And
Did it replace the 2.5?
we did, yes.
Or it's in addition to? No, it replaced it. So 2.5 got pulled off the rigs and repacked with 2.25.
Yeah, it's through attrition. I mean, it would cost too much just to totally.
No, I understand.
Scrap
Right.
it. So every rig got 350 feet. So the lead length on standpipes and of those 3 bundles, and 300 feet on as the top of the static load. So yeah.
And what's your target flow on that line then? What do you? It's close to the 2.5, correct?
Yeah, it's 265.
It is 265.
Inch and an
Okay.
eighth, yep.
Inch and an eighth tip. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I got you. That's interesting to me. I wonder. I mean, that goes back to that whole true ID conversation too with hose that people don't truly understand. And I what's interesting to me is I think people are starting to get it more and more. Like, I love guys like yourself, right? So you were talking about RC cars, BMX, like CrossFit today for you. I want to talk about that because that's what's occupying the majority of your time today, you with your wife. And it's a wonderful thing that you guys are doing to stay connected and working on doing your CrossFit. It's like you're dedicated to it, but you talked about that all-in attitude. I'm finding that more and more people are starting to really get in and go down those rabbit holes that you talk about. Every department seems to have that one guy that is like, I'm the hose and nozzle guy. I'm the guy that I'm doing the homework. I'm going to share this with you. And that is so appreciated from guys like me because I'm just not smart enough to have the patience or the consistency to just go after hose and nozzle pairings and figure out all my numbers and figure out how we work and operate our culture. Does it fit? Does it not? It's just not me. But we need that. We need that guy.
Yeah, and I think for us it was myself, Jay Camella, as I said, and I worked with Dennis Laguerre. We were in the same firehouse for a long time, and he was, he's a lot more with the numbers and everything, and came up with this concept of True ID. So I got to see the birth of that.
I listen to some of his stuff, and I'm like, man, I'm dumb. I'm just like, I don't know, man. You lost me 10 minutes ago. But, you know what I'm saying? But we need that.
Yeah.
We need that.
And that's where I think going back to, you need to know the numbers, but you also have to just know the practicality. And what was it like in your hands? How is this going to feel in the streets when it's over or under pumped and things like that?
Well, that's a really good point that I don't think enough people talk about because that's the human variable that actually matters. A lot of times, like, you look at departments, they're going to make a change, and they make arbitrary decisions based upon half information or not even vetting the information, right? And I do think today in the fire service, we talked about how educated we are. I think we're in a really good place where we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have a lot of people such as yourself and Dennis Laguerre and a few other guys that in this area, they know the product very well. You've done the work. You've done the research. You've done the human variable testing with your own department to know what packages work. We don't need, every fire department doesn't need to go out and reinvent the wheel. You just have to make sure that the work that's been done ahead of you will work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not everything's transferable.
Correct.
We have different staffing. We have different building types. I mean, sometimes we'll go to a class and you'll hear a piece of information, but you have to understand your buildings. I mean, just an example of that. I remember, we don't deal with basement fires out here. We got very, very hard soil. We're at sea level. But we have a lot of like walkout basements and hillside homes. So people will call it a basement. There are some, but it's not a fire we're commonly dealing with. But I would hear, from some East Coast guys going in, be at the top of the stairs, prevent vertical spread, maybe get down the stairs rapidly, and make it down to the basement. I didn't have fires like that, but I was staying at a friend's house in Colorado, and it was a modern track house area, and it's, we go down to the basement because he's remodeling it, and it's just all super lightweight construction. Right above that is like his granite counter, island, and
sure,
it's like no, that tactic would be a disaster there. You'll go plummeting into the basement as soon as there's no fire protection there. It's going to collapse pretty fast. And I was talking to a friend that worked in that job, and he said, interesting you mentioned that, because he remembers seeing the entire floor collapse into the basement on a fire like that. And it's like
100%.
It's not that tactic I learned is incorrect, but it would be, not the best tactic in that, more lightweight track housing construction. So one thing I do like about learning from people with different construction types or staffing is sometimes it just reinforces what you're doing is the right thing, and you have a better understanding of why what you're doing is correct, so just something to think about.
Well, that's the importance of vetting the information, because when, everything is not always greater. You go to a conference, I talk about this all the time. You go to a conference, you pick up a tip or a trick or something different, and you bring it home, and you're like, guys, check this out. Let's do this. If you don't put it through its paces on your own asphalt, and you're not stretching, if it's some type of line, I always talk about bumper lines because they've become so popular, guys working off the front bumper and so on. And it's like, if you've never put that bundle to test or the way they pack it to your own standards and the way you operate, it doesn't mean it's right. So you got to vet all that information that comes in. You just have to be willing to put the work in. And I think that's a big part of it, is putting the work in.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that's, we all know nozzle forward, and I remember talking to Aaron Fields, and he had taken a class at FDIC with like Jay Camella, and learning these techniques of how to handle a hose line. And he said that didn't exactly work for me, but he put in a lot of work and came up with a system that worked better for him and his environment, and made it his own through a lot of hard work. And that was, that's great. And now there's just more options out there for, people learning how to handle a hose line. It's, that's great. But you have to put in the work and see. And when people come back from a conference and they're really eager to make a change, one thing I like to say to those people is, slow down. A lot of times it is a better tool, or maybe it is a better technique. But like I said earlier, people don't want things just to be shoved down their throat. Get others involved. Let them be part of that evaluation, and say, hey, there's this halogen bar that I used. I just wanted to, do some testing and get it in their hands and let them make the decision. They don't want somebody just saying this is a better tool. We need to get rid of the other one. And that will get a lot more buy-in because other people, more people are involved, and acknowledge the negative of it, acknowledge the positive of it, and just make a good evaluation. It will lead to a lot of frustration if you just come home and you just try and make a change and people aren't biting on it. And those frustrations, I've seen people start losing sight of how beautiful this job is. You're still on a red fire engine. Well, some of us are, white or yellow or whatever, but you're on a fire engine honking the horn and flashing lights, and people are waving to you, and it's an awesome job. So don't let that type of frustration get in the way of just what an awesome occupation that you're in,
I do think we get caught up a lot in the day-to-day, and we lose sight of that. And I always say this, like, at the end of the day, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. I mean, it's fun. It's fun what we get to do.
Yeah, I had a friend I worked with, and he said happiness is a choice. And we all know somebody that's just always miserable, and somebody else that's always happy.
Yeah.
But, if you come into the firehouse and people are not, really engaging with you, then, look at what type of person you are and think about the type of person you like to engage with in the firehouse. And most of the time, if it's like, yeah, you're here, and they're just super engaged and handing you coffee and stuff, you're doing something right. But if they're not, take a look at, are you being a downer or whatever? You want to be a positive energy in the firehouse.
I couldn't agree with you more. I go on and on about that stuff. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. But it takes accountability, and it takes humility to look at oneself and realize if you're happy with who you are, and if you're not, change it. You have the opportunity to do that, right? And I think that's so important. I want to kind of double down on something that you just talked about, because I want to go a little deeper with it, because I know it's important to you. It's important to me. And that is being open-minded to make progress. Like 30 years in the fire service, 23 with the city of Oakland, California. Your last few years there as a captain, training in the training division, captain. You worked in a lot of busy companies. Before that, Redwood City. You have quite the colorful career with 30-plus years in the fire service. Recently retired, congratulations, with the last year or so, Daryl. But my point of saying all that is, it's not always commonplace for a 30-year guy to be completely open-minded, to understand that in order to affect change, you have to remain open-minded. You're still a student. I mean, you and I met. The first time we met was FDIC this year, and we bumped into each other at a local watering hole. Yeah. And I knew who you were just from, being a student of the game and hearing a lot of your different, reading some of your stuff and seeing the brass tacks videos with you and so on. I mean, I certainly knew who you were, and it was an honor to say hello and introduce myself to you. But that's how relationships are made, and you're there because you want to be there, because you're hungry to learn more and to meet people and to make this better, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I like going out to FDIC and some other smaller, speaking engagements or conferences throughout the year, because it keeps me still engaged with the fire service. It's a huge part of my life, so I'll continue to do that to a point. It's not going to be like a full-time,
I get it.
full-time thing, but yeah, staying engaged in the fire service. But as far as continuing to learn, I can see easily that somebody's retired and feeling like, why I don't do that anymore. But I do in a way that, like I said earlier, if I'm teaching something that can have an impact on fires, like I said, I'm not even at. And I've had so many students come up and said, hey, you don't really, know this, but you changed our engine or whatever happened. These teachings and these classes can be infectious, because
that's right.
I may not know the student that much, but once you kind of have a name out there in the fire service, they certainly know who you are, and they're they're paying money, they're taking a trade at work or mutual or whatever you call it. They're paying for a hotel and a flight, and they're going out there to learn something and bring it back. And they're going to remember those instructors. And, they're taking that, your word, as an experienced and technical savvy professional. And so it's really important that I'm passing on information that I feel is vetted. And things do continue to, new stuff comes out and new building features and things. So you have to keep your finger on the pulse so you're not passing on old information.
2.25 hose.
Yeah.
It's pretty new. I mean, it's not like, I mean, I know it's been around for several years and probably 10 years now, whatever it's been, but it's still new in the world of the fire service because 90% of the fire service doesn't use it or haven't probably even heard of it.
You know what Oakland and San Francisco used to use before 3-inch?
No.
2 3/4.
Is that right?
All of our books and San Francisco's old books say 2 3/4-inch hose. And then it was they moved up to 3-inch and a lot
2
of
3/4.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That was a thing. So this
double jacketed, weighs a ton, right? Probably brass couplings, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I always loved polishing brass couplings. I just thought I was one when I was younger. My dad started an auto detailing business. He had his own profession, but it was a way for the kids to work. I've had a job since I was 12 years old, but
yeah,
we would detail cars and motorhomes and things like that. And
you got good at it.
I just loved polishing the rig. I get having some, edginess of a rig that looks like it just went into battle and it's a little rough around the edges, but I also like having things polished and clean, and that's something I like. It shows some real ownership.
For sure. And I love, God, I'm drawing a blank and it's going to come to me in a second, but Vallejo, California, right? So I've been out to San Francisco and the Oakland area. I've been out there a bunch, and I was going up to Napa, and we stopped in Vallejo on the way and met a couple guys there that I had met through, social media or whatever. And those guys are still wearing like wool shirts, long sleeve with the polished buttons on the front.
Yeah.
And there is just something absolutely badass about that traditional stance of maintaining that uniform. I love it. They probably, I don't know if they like it or not. I don't know. But from an outsider looking in, where job shirts or T-shirts and shorts or long, like whatever it is, they're buttoned up tight, man. And there's just something about that.
Yeah, if you go into a San Francisco firehouse, and those not familiar with the geography, Oakland and San Francisco actually border each other by the bridge.
Yes.
But their rigs, you open up the compartment and there's polished brass. It's always nice and shiny and polished. And so in Redwood City, we were the same way. Even the pole, that wasn't a thing in Oakland, but the poles that you slid down in the firehouse, they polish them every Sunday.
No way.
That's
so cool. I think things like that still matter. I'm glad that that's not getting lost. And I was just at a firehouse yesterday, brand new construction, $14 million firehouse, just in it yesterday, and their insurance company wouldn't let them have a pole, so no more traditional poles, but they put a slide in. I went down the slide. The thing went like this. It was a corkscrew slide, right? But at time, when you get off of that at the bottom, you're dizzy. It's probably worse. It's probably worse than the pole.
I will say I actually got my first job because a member, it was a small department, so you kind of know who you're replacing. It's not like that on big jobs, but fell down the pole. He basically, they had a fire earlier. His turnout pants were wet, and it used to be where you kept your bunker pants right by the bed, and they had a greater alarm fire, and it was raining, so his pants are pretty wet, and then he went down the pole for a call after that. Somebody went down, the pole was wet, and then he goes down and basically slid down. His legs are in a cross position, it's like, it was pretty high. It's like 20 feet, you know,
Yeah.
and just crashed and just he's able to walk today but still using like those like cane looking things. His name was Joe Doherty, and he actually was an FDNY dispatcher during the war years,
No kidding.
and then came out to the West Coast and became a firefighter. And it was nothing like the war years. It's like, where are all the fires, you know?
I'm sure he's got some stories though, huh?
Oh
Holy
yeah,
mackerel.
yeah. But no, you know, it's just an interesting thing that ended up being the opening, and my opportunity to get in was an unfortunate incident.
Yeah. Well, you never know what doors
Yeah.
are going to open for you. And how did you find the fire service? Were you a product of it? Were you a legacy or 20
No,
years
not at all.
old?
Nobody in the. I was you know, I was just out of high school. I'm still working at a tire shop, changing truck and car tires. You know, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was working at a tire shop in Oakland. There was a firehouse across the street, and
Got it.
my father had a friend who worked in Oakland, old high school friend, and I ended up working with the guy for a while.
Cool.
So that was cool. But I just knew whatever I do, I need to enjoy that for 30 years, and it just I don't know, it was just intriguing to me, and I thought I wanted to be a helicopter pilot.
That's
And
cool.
when I talked to helicopter pilots, a lot of them were like, why do you want to do this? Nobody was like thrilled. And when I talked to the firefighters, they all were like, hey, you're not going to be rich, but you're going to love your job, you know? And yeah, being rich wasn't something, I mean, what's rich, you know?
That's it.
If you're enjoying your life, then you're rich, I guess. So, yeah, and it just intrigued me more and more. And then I started, like I said, I go down the rabbit hole researching stuff, and I took some junior college classes, and just one thing led to another, and I ended up, you know, getting hired really, really fast.
Awesome.
So I think I was 19 years old when I took that oral board interview, and
Wow.
got a job at 20, and so yeah, we did a rafting trip. You know, my first year on, and they're all going to the bar, and it's like, I'm not 21 yet. Like, come on.
Can I
You're
come
going to
in?
the bar with us. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
right.
yeah, I was young, and I loved it, and just, man, I found the right career. I
It hooked
found the
you.
right career for me. It's not the right job for a lot of people, but for me, it 100% didn't feel like a job,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
I
it sounds like
coming into work.
it sounds like you had an incredible work ethic from very early on in your life at 12 years old, working, and you know those values being instilled into you, that it was important that you found something that you could go all in on. I mean, that's just who you are. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward 30 years. How's retirement treating you? You retired a year ago, you said, right? July of 23, I think you said.
Yeah, it's been good. I'm kind of Mr. Mom in some ways, because I have two daughters. They're 16 and 14, and it was the right time. It felt like the right time for me
There you go.
to walk away 100%. My parents are getting older. They're in their
Sure.
80s, and I wanted to be around for them. I don't want to be, you know, at work when mom needs help, and that happened. My mom had a fall, you know, just a couple months ago, and I was there at the rehab center when she
Sure.
was recovering from this pelvic fracture, and it was like, I'm so glad I'm not, you know, stuck at work,
Yeah.
so to speak. And my kids, you know, they're not in the house forever. You know, I know it's the last couple of years for them to be here. I wanted to be with them, and
I
took
got
them.
16, 17 at home right now, and then
Yeah.
two that are out already. But yeah, it goes fast, brother. Goes
Yeah, and
fast.
it's not all about money, but you
No.
know, you get one life. So if somebody wants to work and continue doing it, you know, do what you love to do. And I loved doing it, but I knew I was like at the finish line, at least in that department. I wasn't going to promote to battalion chief. That ship sailed. It wasn't anything I was ever interested in, so I never
Right.
took the classes. I never did all the stuff it would take. I I just wanted to be on a fire engine my whole career, and that's what I
Get
did.
it.
I spent a little time on a truck to try that out, but I just like being on an engine.
Gave it back.
Yeah, and yeah, and so my pension was maxed.
Yeah.
The city itself was kind of decaying. Unfortunately, they just lost all their sports teams. The budget
Yeah.
didn't look bright. And I left my last year. Finally made the busiest engine in the city. So it took 30 years, but
You got
we had
there.
that mark, and I wasn't going to go back. So it was time to go, and yeah, focus.
I get it. I think that that's important, though, because that's how you leave in a good way.
Yeah,
You leave on your terms, and you ended on a high note, and you instilled some change and put I don't know, built a reputation with a good name, solid name. I mean, those are things that matter. So when you do or when you are ready to walk away, you've made a
yeah,
difference.
yeah, and that time's going to come for everybody. And I think for retirement, a lot of people focus on the financial aspect a lot,
Yeah.
but you have to figure out what other things you want to do, because the finances are going to be what they are.
Right.
But it's going to be a change for the family, friends, hobbies, things like that. And I think going to training and working a 40-hour week for the last 2 years really kind of allowed the plane to land,
Yep.
slowly, instead of leaving the firehouse, which is.
But you got to prepare yourself too, because it's that you're right. Everybody focuses on the financial aspect of it, but it's also, what am I going to do today now? And now I don't have the daily camaraderie or laughter or chops being broken and so on. And so that's a big miss too, is it not?
Oh, that is probably the biggest
Yeah.
miss. 100% is just you think of people you worked with and how will you run into them. You're not going to just walk in the firehouse and say,
Right.
"Hey, what's going on?" And how's the family, and hearing a story. It was always fun walking into the firehouse and hearing some story of
Sure.
whatever
Of
happened the
course.
night before or something. It's a soap opera
That's right.
episode every day, and but at some point that will come to an end, and I want to enjoy other parts of life. It's like the fire service is a huge part of my life, but it's not everything for me.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, we had a member pass away of cancer. He was early 50s. He might have been 53 or so, and it was just like 2-3 years after he retired, and that really hit me that hey, not just to be a downer, but there is
Right.
an expiration date, and there's other things if you want to travel or enjoy sports. I like mountain biking. I like I said, skiing and snowboarding and travel, and yeah, going. I took a trip to Japan recently, and there's a lot of walking.
That's when we connected.
Yeah.
We were emailing or texting during that time.
Oh yeah, I don't want
Yeah.
to. I don't want to have to wait till I'm 70, and next thing you know, I can't bounce a mountain
Good
bike
for
down the
you.
hill, or
Yeah, absolutely.
walking miles and miles on a trip. Enjoy that stuff while you're, in your younger years.
I think what's fun too, though, is you've through the legacy and your willingness to learn and innovate along the way in your career, you've set yourself up for being able to still have impact from the fire service within your life,
Oh,
because
it's
you
incredible.
right teaching, conferences, education, podcasts, like all that stuff. It's
Yeah,
important.
it's incredible, and I'm just so fortunate. My entire career, I feel like I've just had people that believed in me or saw something in me. I remember being at FDIC and somebody's asking like, "Hey, how do you become an instructor?" And I never sought to be an instructor.
That's
I
right.
I just
Right.
McGrail invited me, and I think it's just if you're genuine, if you're you know uh, you just have to have a personality that is open, and it opens up doors. Just be authentic and open
That's it.
and passionate.
Honest.
Yeah, and passionate, and that's how we connected, and that's how I connected with so many other people that gave me opportunities. I'm just a regular guy. I'm not like, superstar or anything, but it's great. As soon as I retired, I got a call from, a couple of companies that asked if I would, go work for them. And it was just nice to know that through my connections and just maintaining relationships, these opportunities can come along,
100%. It's all based upon your hard work. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
That's why you get to reap the rewards of who you are. And for me, my life has been quite the evolution. And I wasn't, years and years ago in when I was younger, I was Tommy Boy, fat, drunk, and stupid. Like, life was good. I was entitled. Things were given to me. And I took advantage and exploited all that. And then only did I realize through time and maturity is that's not who I wanted to be. And I've changed completely. Yeah, my wife would tell you in the last 5 years, let alone 10 and 15 years, I'm a completely different human being today than I was, just those times ago. And I'm very proud of that. And I talk a lot about that in my Bridging the Gap program, because that program is a lot about who I am and who I've become. And I challenge people, and I tell people all the time, I'm guilty. Everything I talk about in this program, I'm guilty of. I have violated every single thing I talk about here, but I've learned from it. Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to end on a high note? Are you willing to walk out the door on your terms because you've done the right thing? And that, I think, is super, super important. I really do.
Yeah. It's when you say, I did the hard work, it's, again, it reminds me of how awesome this job is, because it rarely felt like hard work. It always just felt like I'm playing with stretching hose lines and flowing water and doing it with students, or doing it with other instructors or coworkers. And I guess it is, there is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears involved.
Absolutely.
But it never felt that way. And I think everybody has some type of opportunity, or hopefully there's some passion that they find in the fire service. I'm an idiot with a lot of other parts of the fire service. Like, when it comes to, ropes and rescue stuff, and that was an advantage, being in a larger department. We have the water rescue people and the hazmat people, and in a smaller organization, you really have a lot more on your shoulders, because you have to know like all things, and you might be working on a quint, and you have to be good at water and ropes and
many hats.
And I was able just to work on a single engine house surrounded by wooden buildings, and that was my part of the band, and that's what I like to do. And but not everybody has that type of advantage. But my advice to people is just find something that you're genuinely passionate in, and stick to that, and become the expert in that. Because we need experts in every part. Some are in the technology and radios and other, we had one guy really into just reforming our fire prevention program. How many people want to do that? But thank God he was there, and he wanted to make a change.
He's
because
needed.
He made things so much better.
Yeah.
And but there's something for everybody in this.
I think that's incredible advice, and I think today more than ever you have the opportunity to really dial in on something. You have a passion, double down on it, and do the work. Put the work in. I promise you, the reward is 100-fold. It really is. Yeah,
100%.
Daryl Liggins, thank you, brother. It was an absolute honor to have you on the show today. That hour goes quick, pal. But,
it does.
It was a lot of fun. I really didn't know much about you other than what I've seen, like I alluded to earlier, and it was just fun getting to know you a little bit today. Looking forward to crossing paths with you, and thank you for trusting me with some of your story today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation, and I'll see you at the next FDIC, if not before.
Definitely. Appreciate you. Daryl, thank you very much. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, they want to reach out to you about anything we talked about, or even classes or things that you're doing or staying up to speed with you, can they find you anywhere, reach out to you?
Yeah, I have Facebook. I'm not too active on that, but they can always email me at my name, Daryl Liggins, DARYL at iCloud.com. And
Cool.
some people email me with questions and things, and I try to respond to that right away. And Instagram.
I'm not looking to overburden you here with people sending you stuff.
I love engaging like that. So that's probably the best way, is just to send me an email.
Awesome.
And,
well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you joining me today, taking the time out of your busy schedule. I'm glad that we figured out East Coast versus West Coast time. That was something that we had to work out. But all good, man. I truly appreciate you spending time with me today. Stay right here. I'm going to sign off the show. I'll come right back to you, okay? So don't go anywhere. Guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. Like I say at the end of every single episode, take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse, and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we are making the job better. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks for tuning in. Jeremy, National Fire Radio. National Fire Radio.